Hey y'all, this is Brown at IF Brown, and I want to talk a little bit about some stuff that's been on my mind as of late. And I was going to sit down and try and do a comic book review, but this seemed to be a little more, I guess, pertinent, or it was in rolling around in my head a lot more than, say, the comic book review was, and which I do want to do soon. Just, this kind of has to come first, otherwise, I'm gonna, forget what I'm wanting to say. But we all get to a point where I think, things that used to give us an immense amount of joy, we get to a point where these things either don't give us joy anymore or not as much joy as, they used to give us. And case in point, I've always liked, comics, books, and movies. And, I'm always going to like comics, books, and movies. But I think one of the things that happened was, see, when I was younger, I was kind of a loner. I was very sheltered. I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing or anything. It's just that, I had friends, but for the most part, I was content with being, by myself. Like I could read a book, I could watch a movie, I could, read comics. I could get lost in, the world of something that I was reading about, or, sometimes I would combine elements in my head and, come up with some, fantastic new adventure that, no one's ever done before, combining elements from multiple things into one big, smorgasbord, but I guess, as I got older and I got to experience more of life, I started to, have more of an interest in, say, making friends and what have you. And, and obviously, if, said friends shared some common interests with me, that was definitely something that I think, we bonded over. And, it's like I remember in high school when I was really getting out of my shell. That was a really fun time in my life. It really was. And there are things about that time in my life that I look back on and, have a lot of fondness for. And then there are other things where I'm like, I was a naive kid, that kind of thing. But we all go through stuff like that. But I guess as I got older, like say, even in college, I could always rely on these things to sort of get me through the day. Because oftentimes it feels like, the real world, it's a monster that, the minute you let your guard down or the minute you think things are going okay, it's going to swallow you up and, spit you out, as cliche as it sounds, and it got to where, I developed severe anxiety problems that, to be honest, I'd kind of struggled with for quite some time, but it made it to where, I functioned in society, I functioned in the real world, and continue to do so, but sometimes it's more of a, I have to do this, as opposed to, say, I want to do this, because, like, let's say, if I'm at a job or if I was at school, I could play the part of the student or I could play the part of the employee, but I was, and I went out of my way to, be nice to people and everything, but I didn't really come alive until I, say for instance, met someone who happened to share some similar interests, and that's when it's like, hey, actually being a real person, that kind of thing. And I feel like a lot of these, material things have defined me as a person. You look around, you got this, Marvel blanket, you got this Batman poster, you got Fringe, you got this Pacific Rim shirt, so, hey, at least I'm not, wearing a bunch of Reeboks, Nikes, and, like that Wayne's World bit where, they were, poking fun at, commercialization and, what have you. But, there's a reason I, like this stuff. There's a reason I'm fond of this stuff, because, it jogs the brain. It gives you, a drive to imagine, I mean, all these things. But I think what ended up happening is just that as I've gotten older and I've had to interact with the real world out of necessity, I got to where I started to find things about the real world that I enjoyed, like maybe, having, a girlfriend, or, going out to, certain, nightclubs or something like that, or, just stuff that people do. I mean, people do when, they're not at work, or, when they have money to throw around and have some fun, and, and there was even a period of time where, I got together with some, friends who, we hadn't, like, we kind of kept in touch, from, high school or college, and, we would hang out a lot, and, it was really fun, and it felt like, hey, I'm actually being a real person, but then it gets to where, life just gets in the way. And so, say for instance, I don't know, like maybe with, family or something like that, there was a point in time where, y'all clicked on certain things, but then, as, you develop your own identity, there are things that, y'all butt heads on, or, maybe if, say, when it comes to friends, maybe there are things that happen in y'all's lives where, maybe through no fault of anyone, it's just things happen. You drift apart. Maybe they move. Maybe, they get married or something like that, and, maybe something happens with you, and maybe you go through, I don't know, maybe an emotional, tumultuous time in your life, to where, you become someone else, and you're not who you used to be, and you wish you could be, and there's still a part of who you used to be in the person you are now. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, I mean, amongst other things here, is just that, I look at some of the stuff I have. I mean, the stuff that kind of defined me as a person, like all these material possessions, like, all these books, movies and comics and what have you. And some of these things, I've only like watched or read, a certain number of times in my life. And while maybe they brought me some joy at a certain point, they're not things that I would necessarily have a desire to revisit now. Like, I mean, I can maybe talk about them, but at the same time, are they helping to get me through the day? No, they're not. Now, on the other hand, are there movies, books, and comics that I can honestly say, yes, these things, are as good as I remember them being, and I would gladly reread them or rewatch them? Of course, yeah. But at the same time, I feel like I went too far in relying on, say, certain material possessions to get me through things, to get me through the day. And I remember, a couple of people, like, sometimes family members, sometimes friends, saying that, hey, you need to, if not outright get rid of your comic books, or your collection of stuff. I mean, you need to at least downsize. And so, for a while, I was kind of at a point where, it felt like I thought that they were just trying to say, hey, you need to totally reinvent yourself and be a complete, rich douchebag or something like that. And sometimes it really came across like that. And sometimes that is what they meant, I'm not going to, name names or anything. It's just, sometimes, it's like there's a valid point, but at the same time, they're being a douchebag about it, or they literally mean what they're sounding like they're meaning, and sometimes it was an instance of, hey, we have a good point, but it's coming across kind of harshly. And so when that happens, just depending on one's mindset, it gets to where you kind of push back, and it's like, I feel like when stuff like this happens, I feel like if people were to, say, try and talk with you and relate with you as a person, and, I guess you could say vibe with you, for lack of a better term, and then try and make this point, I mean, I feel like people would be more inclined to say improve themselves. Whereas if they're put in a situation of you need to do this or you're cut off, or you need to do this or breaking up, or you need to do this or I'm cutting you out, or I'm throwing you out of the group, or some shit. It all depends. I mean, it's all every situation's different, and I guess it's one of those things where, I mean, we're all still growing up. I mean, some of us are grown up more than others, but at the same time, I mean, I've seen a lot of people, and some people I've seen who are older than me who are still acting like spoiled brats, and it's kind of like, well, hey, you're being a complete douchebag, and you're supposed to have more life experience than I am, and yet, and I'm supposed to look up to you, but you're being a piece of shit, and it's like, do I really want to follow this person's example? That kind of thing. And then you look at yourself, and you're kind of like, I'm not trying to be arrogant, but I mean, there have been, plenty of times in my life where people who, quote unquote, had it together, and are trying to, hammer a point home, it's like, I'm looking at them and I'm trying to understand what they're saying, and then I do understand what they're saying, but at the same time, it's like they're trying to say, look at me, look at my life, I'm better than you, and all this stuff. And sometimes that's what it was. That's what was being said. And other times it was more along the lines of, they meant well, but it came across the wrong way. It's just they didn't know how to talk, to me, or something like that. And, when that happens, I mean, there's always going to be there's always going to be miscommunication. There's always going to be, hey, someone assumes that talking to someone in a certain way is going to get the point across, or, they're going to, I mean, every situation's different. Every person's different, and I just feel like, see, I'm in my late 30s, okay? I'm pushing 40, and I'm just now getting to a point where I realize that, I mean, yes, I got a lot of joy from these things, and, for the purposes of doing my reviews, I mean, they give me a lot of things to talk about, and I'm glad that, people who have checked out my reviews, I mean, and continue to do so, I'm glad that y'all do that, and I'm glad y'all take the time to listen. Thank y'all very much. I really appreciate that. I mean, I'm not saying I'm gonna, give up on that, because I mean, there are a lot of things that I would like to talk about, so it's like, I mean, I've got, all these books, movies, and, what have you, and, obviously downsizing, okay, yes, that's something we all need to do, but at the same time, if I'm going to get rid of something, I'd like to talk about it first and tell someone about it, and maybe then be like, toss it or whatever. But I think one of the things that kind of made me really want to talk just about all this was, okay, so half-price books. It's a decent place to buy stuff, but terrible place to sell stuff. And, I've been meaning to look at Facebook Marketplace. I've been meaning to, check out Craigslist, but I just never got around to it. But to be fair, though, with the Craigslist thing, I mean, there's the whole Craigslist killer, story that, I don't think Craigslist is ever going to live down, But on the other hand, I mean, I guess I've just always been kind of old-fashioned about trying to, do transactions. Like, I like to do face-to-face, that kind of thing. And I only recently got to where, I'm comfortable with, say, regularly doing stuff online when it comes to business, that kind of thing. And I realize, from what people tell me that, if I, actually go into something like, Marketplace or, what have you, and just, follow the guidelines, follow the rules, I mean, I could definitely, get, some good deals, for stuff I have, as opposed to, say, getting screwed over by going to, say, trying to sell stuff at a comic shop or half-price books, and which is ironic when it comes to a comic book shop, because you would think that, they would, be willing to give you a lot more, but unfortunately, it's like the way things are right now. It's like, you look at certain websites or certain price guides, and you might have comic books that are worth Lord knows how much, but if you try and go to someplace nearby and sell it, they're just going to give you chicken feed, if that. But like today, I sold some stuff at half price, and I just, it was one of those moments where, unfortunately, it was like a combination of things, where it was like, you had some recent auto, some stuff with my car, and then you had rent come up, and it was just kind of a perfect storm where it's like, oh yeah, I really have to be a hermit, and I mean, I'm okay and everything. It's just, I mean, payday's coming up, next week, so, and rent's taken care of, so I'm good as far as that goes. But at the same time, it's like, when you have a decent amount of money and you get to be a little frivolous with certain things, you get to go out to eat and what have you, but then you have to dial it down and just stay home. And it's frustrating, because it's like you want to live, you want to have joy, you want to go out, and it's funny, because I look back on these things, on like when I was happy being a homebody, and I mean, like right now I'm okay with being a homebody, but I'm not happy with being a homebody, if that makes sense. Like, I could just play a game, I could watch a movie, I could read a book, what have you. But the thing is, I've experienced enough of, the outside, or, face-to-face, interactions with real people, to where it's like, yeah, sometimes people can be real douchebags, but other times people can be pretty cool, And, it's like, when you have things happen where, say, for instance, you got a girlfriend or something, and you realize that things could be different, and but then things happen where it's all taken away. It's like you get a glimpse of something wonderful, and then poof, it's gone. And I'm still trying to figure out what the lesson to all this is. I mean, I've gotten parts of this lesson, but overall it's just very frustrating. But anyway, so I sold some stuff at Half Price Books, and I got $9, okay, which really pissed me off. But at the same time, I didn't want to lug all this stuff back home, because it's like I was trying to downsize a bit, and that would kind of defeat the purpose. And I know I should have gone ahead and taken the time, look at Marketplace, Craigslist, what have you, and I'll do that at some point in the near future. I'm kind of going to have to, if I want to actually do something where I sell stuff that brought me some joy, but I actually get something decent out of it and not get screwed over. And I know that's just life. That's what happens. You go to Half Price Books or a comic book store, they'll screw you over if you're trying to sell something. But what happened was, I'm waiting for them to call me with the offer, right? And I'm just kind of wandering around, and I realized something. Okay, so I have always liked books, okay? I have always liked books. I love to read. And yet, here I am pacing around, Half Price. I mean, yes, I'm looking around, but I'm not really seeing anything, if that makes sense. Like, it's all just the equivalent of background noise to me. And I realize I've gotten to that point, where, I mean, I guess as you're growing up, you realize that you don't need all this shit, and so I'm in a place where you would think, hey, this is, paradise, or this is a treasure trove. And time was, places like Half Price, I mean, they were that for me, in the sense of, trying to find stuff there. But now it's just like, I couldn't wait to leave, because, I mean, I was hoping to, make, a decent amount of money. Like, I recently sold some stuff there, and I got like $30, which apparently that's like, hey, that's like the gold standard of, getting cash back for your items, that kind of thing, but I was hoping to have similar luck there, but $9. So, I was asking about that, like, why is that so? Why such a low deal? And the lady, she got kind of flustered and not mad or anything, but just, I'm sure she just dealt with stuff like this all the time. But she said that there was like an algorithm that they go through, and, it all just depends on what's hot at the moment, which I guess is, common sense when it comes to marketplace stuff. I mean, I'm not an economist, so, I'm I'm a little late in, learning about stuff like this. I mean, I've heard about stuff, but I guess it's just, when you're older and, you're really having to pay attention to this stuff, But I mean, yeah, I took the $9, but I just, it kind of pissed me off that I was selling stuff that some of which it was like, okay, one and done, I'm not going to give a shit. And other times though, some of the other things, it's like, hey, these are good books, or hey, these are good movies, but I don't see myself rereading or rewatching them again, so it's like I was wanting to sell them and, get something for my trouble, and I guess technically I did, but I guess it's just that, it's frustrating when you're trying to downsize and cut down on, the stuff that formerly brought you joy, but it's like, at least in my case, I mean, I think I idealized the face-to-face interaction because I liked actually interacting with a person, but just because you're interacting with a person, that doesn't mean, they're going to play straight with you, or that doesn't mean you're going to get a good deal. I mean, I shouldn't say, they're not going to play straight in the sense that they're just doing their jobs, okay? I get that, all right? So this isn't directed at any person in particular, but it's just that, the whole business model of, screwing over the customer for chicken feed, I mean, it's just, it's very disillusioning. And so it's kind of like, I look at some of the stuff I have, and some of it, I mean, like I said, I mean, there's still going to be movies that I will always like. There are always going to be certain comic books I'll always like, and books I'll always like. But at the same time, it's frustrating how we get to a point where we accumulate all these things, thinking that, hey, if you get screwed over in real life, you can fall back on these things because they're always going to be there for you. And that's what it felt like for me. It felt like, yes, they're just material possessions, but it's like, hey, say for instance, I don't know, you're seeing someone and y'all end up breaking up. Maybe it's her fault, maybe it's your fault, maybe it's a little bit of both. Maybe just life just, throw you both a curveball, that kind of thing. Or, maybe, it's like, you get attached to a certain group of friends, but then life just gets in the way, and everyone goes their separate way, and you're kind of like, well, I mean, so much for stability, right? I mean, that's what it feels like sometimes, and so it's like, I guess I just, at least I don't know if I can speak for anyone else, but with me, when stuff like that happened, like when I was given those moments where, hey, life can be good, life can be beautiful, you don't have to be a shut-in. But then, when, things happen to where things don't work out, or everyone just ends up going different directions, and, you can't rely on that group of, people anymore. I mean, it's like, I mean, and it's like, that it's really no one's fault in some instances, but at the same time, that doesn't really fill the void of, that group of people that you used to interact with, that kind of thing. And you tell yourself that it's going to happen. I mean, life's going to, life is volatile, life is uncertain, life is unpredictable, okay? And, due to some advice I've gotten recently, it's actually good advice, but it's like, I try and tell myself that, every day, life is, uncertain, life is volatile, life is unpredictable, so that way when I do get hit with a curveball that I don't see coming, I'm not as freaked out about it as, say, I used to be, because it's like, you can only control what you yourself do. You can't control what happens outside of yourself. And sometimes that helps, and I'm not saying it's, it helps 100% of the time, but for me, it kind of just, you know, it helps me to have a certain amount of perspective. So, like for example, when I had that little moment of, that sort of eureka moment at Half Price Books today, when I realized that, the stuff that used to bring me joy, isn't something that is as effective as it used to be, you know, or just realizing that it's all, like George Carlin said, it's just stuff, it's stuff, that kind of thing. And I just wish that, like, in a lot of ways, I mean, I was sheltered in a lot of ways, I guess you could say. I have good parents and what have you, but I do wish that I had taken it upon myself to, I guess, be a little more outgoing when it came to, say, interacting with, the everyday world, that kind of thing. And because I feel like, I would have learned to, I guess, roll with the punches, so to speak, when, the stuff that you used to rely on for comfort doesn't bring you comfort anymore, or at the very least doesn't fill the void like it used to, that kind of thing. I just, I'm having like a lot of experiences, later on in life, that I wished I'd had when I was younger, so that way, I could have gotten to the point of, say, realizing that I didn't need all this stuff, much sooner, as opposed to, say, when I'm pushing 40, But I guess it's like, in Donnie Darko, when he takes the mic and, and he's answering he's telling some of these kids, some real advice. And this one kid, he had asked Patrick Swayze's character of, how do I know, what I want to be when I grow up? And Patrick Swayze's character, who's like a self-help guru, who is telling the kid something along the lines of, just, go, find out what, brings you love and go towards love, or something like that. And then, Donnie Darko, when he takes the mic, when Jake Gyllenhaal takes the mic, he's talking about how, I wish I could remember exactly what the quote was, but it was something along the lines of, sometimes, it takes a long time for people to grow up. It doesn't happen for everyone at the same time. I mean, you could be in your 20s or 30s and get to that eureka moment, and here I am pushing 40, and I had that eureka moment today. And it's just it's this very strange experience. It's a very strange feeling of coming to that point, and I wish I'd gotten to that point sooner. And so I just, it was unsettling, I guess. But also, in a way, it kind of felt liberating, I guess. It's hard to explain, really, because, after I left Half Price, I just, I ended up running some errands, but, I was looking outside, I was looking at the scenery, as I was driving my car, and I was looking at how beautiful it was for so late in the day, and it was almost like, I don't know if, God or whoever, or just nature in general, but it was like a sign almost, just saying, hey, there's so much more to this world than your own perspective, and it doesn't have to be, this end-all be-all drudgery, that we make it out to be. When, I mean, it's a good point, but it's oftentimes easier said than done when it comes to remembering that. But I guess that's where the feeling of liberation came in the sense that, I mean, I'm always going to like this stuff, but, while it's a part of who I am, I want to be more than this, if that makes sense, Like, I don't want to, there was a friend of mine who, she, recently got back from, military service, but she was, sort of joking with me, or half joking, half serious, but, she and I were talking before she went, and on active duty and what have you, and she was talking about how, when she gets back, she wants to see Brown 2.0, right? And so at the time, I think we were both thinking, she wants me to, suddenly, reinvent myself and, have like, this white collar job, or, suddenly be suave and debonair and sophisticated, when it comes to, I guess, fine dining, or how I dress, or, or what have you. And it's like, I mean, I can wear a suit. I can wear a suit rather well, I have. And, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, I'm wearing a suit, but I'm still me. I'm not this, rich douchebag, person that, people seem to, some people seem to want me to be, and at least that's what it felt like, but I think it's funny, she said that. She said she wants, Brown to see Brown 2.0, and maybe she meant, hey, she, wants me to, have a white collar job or something like that, or, be more cultured and refined. But the funny thing is, whether she meant that or not, Brown 2.0 is more along the lines of, I guess, understanding certain truths about life, as well as certain truths about myself, and how it applies to life. And it's a journey that I'm more than a little uncertain on, and I'm trying to go about trying to figure out how to do things better and how to look at things better. And because on one hand, I want to be true to myself, and I don't want to be a quote unquote sellout, by, suddenly getting rid of everything, that was a big part of who I was, and suddenly, just being a soulless, white collar douchebag like Patrick Bateman, from American Psycho, except, okay, maybe without the whole serial killer thing, but at the same time, there's got to be a point where it's like, okay, don't forget, where you came from. Don't forget your roots, but at the same time, there is room for growth. There's room to improve. And that's the thing that I think I struggle with, in the sense that, people, when they're actually talking to me, like when they're actually getting through to me in a way to where it's like, hey, these are hard truths, but we're telling you this, because, we care about you, and it actually comes across that they care about me, as opposed to, say, they're trying to hammer home a point and lecture me and guilt trip me, and and at that point, I get defensive and push them away. And then again, it's a different situation each time. Like, it could be a case of someone's making a good point, but they're not really in a position to be taken as a fountain of wisdom. Sometimes, like, it's like the whole thing in the Bible, and I know it's like I'm agnostic, but I do remember bits and pieces from the Bible. But where Jesus is talking about how basically how can you say, here, brother, let me get that speck of dust out of your eye, when you yourself have a plank of wood in your own eye, that kind of thing. So it's like, say for instance, someone tries to give you some advice or something, or they do so in such a way to where it's like they have this attitude of they're the end all be all fountain of wisdom, and then it turns out that they're not really in a position to be an authority on that. That makes sense. Like, they have their own issues, which calls their knowledge into question, that kind of thing. And so, but on the other hand, when you have those moments where someone actually does get through to you and actually tries to relate to you as a person, that's when it's like, okay, it's some tough stuff, but I'm hearing it, okay? You're actually talking to me as a person, and you're making it clear that you care about me as a person. You value me as a person. So, okay, I'm listening to you here. And stuff like that, I think, helps when it comes to, say, trying to get to that point where you realize that you don't have to define yourself by, material possessions or whatever it is that is the equivalent for you as a person. For me, like I said, I mean, because I was okay with my own company, I mean, I relied a lot on material possessions, but I realized that relying on that too much, it's like you've got all this stuff that it just takes up space and it doesn't bring you the joy as that it used to. So yeah, I'm sorry, I'm all over the place tonight. It's just I was wanting to talk about this and kind of just get this stuff out. So I'm sure I've covered a whole lot of things, as far as this goes. But I guess I just wanted to share my experience, my the path to getting to my eureka moment today, as well as the actual eureka moment. And I don't know what's going to happen in the future. The way things are going in this world, I don't know. I mean, it's funny. It's like people have told me, hey, you need to work at Amazon and all this stuff. Like, like because they'll pay you such and such more to do the job that you're doing now. But then, you hear about the horrible working conditions at Amazon and you're kind of like, okay, maybe it's a good thing I didn't take, that advice, that kind of thing, So it's just like sometimes, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I don't know. And as far as, say, like material possessions go, I mean, it's like the people, they get killed over, stuff that they don't need to get killed over. I mean, I was reading about something like there are these, mobs of people that will steal from places like Home Depot and in like a group of like 4 or 5, and like 2 people will literally get a bunch of stuff onto this cart and push it towards the doors, and then there'll be 2 other people acting as like bodyguards, so that way if anyone tries to stop them, they beat the shit out of them. And it's like I read about that, and people literally getting killed over stuff like that. And a similar group of people, I mean, who were doing the same thing, they pushed this one old guy, he was 80 something years old, and he fell and, he died because he hit his head, and just because he got in the way. And it's stupid. And so I guess when I also read about stuff like that, I realize it's like, I don't need all this stuff. Now, I mean, does that mean I'm inviting people to break into my home? God, no. No, not at all. It's just, I'm just trying to say is that, there are things that I'm grateful to have or to have had, but I just don't need them anymore. And, it's like, I don't need to define myself by that stuff. And, but I just wish that, we lived in a time where, or, a setting where, you could, give this stuff to, someplace and they'd give you a decent amount, for it, because it's like, hey, this stuff meant something to you, but you don't want to get screwed over when you're trying to, get rid of it, that kind of thing. But on the other hand, it's like, do I want to get killed for, something material? No. But at the same time, I mean, does it make it right for people to, do like these, Home Depot mobs? No, I mean, that's wrong. I mean, I guess that's a case of, materialism gone wrong. And so when I read about stuff like that, I'm kind of like, okay, yeah, I could afford to downsize, but at the same time, maybe I'm not so bad off, like I'm not, stealing stuff. I'm not killing people, for a material possession. And it's just, everything's just crazy in this world right now. But I guess, it just goes along with the whole eureka moment I had. And, I guess better late than never, of getting to that point. So, like I said, I don't know what's going to happen in the future or anything. I just, I wasn't expecting to get to that point today or anything, but it just happened like that. And so, I mean, I'll still, be doing my reviews and everything. It's just that, I'm probably not going to go out of my way to, actively, get new things, as far as, books, movies, comics, and what have you. I mean, the comic book scene in general right now is just kind of shit. I mean, as far as, the stuff that's out currently, I mean, I know there was good stuff out there, but it's like I'm looking at stuff from, say, the 80s and 90s, and, you know, it's just so much better. And when it comes to, say, writing and, artwork and what have you, whereas, today it's like, I mean, there's still good writing and good artwork, but it's, when it comes to, say, Marvel and DC, they're just so dead set on pushing a political agenda that, you know, even though there's always been politics and stuff like that, you just, you could still enjoy the story, whereas now it's like you can't even do that. So, I mean, that's another reason why that's a reason why it's like, even though I still like comic books, I'm not going to go out of my way anymore to buy new ones, if that makes sense, and and when I do reviews, I'm going to review the stuff I've already got, if that makes sense, and if it's just a one and done, I mean, hopefully I'll be able to, sell it and, get a good deal on it, after, having talked about it, if it gets to that point. But, and the same thing with books and movies. I mean, or I shouldn't say the same thing, but a similar thing with books and movies. I mean, the, political agenda isn't such a problem for me when it comes to, just ordinary books and movies, because it's like, hey, I can be a discerning viewer and watch what I want to watch and read and I can be a discerning reader and read what I want to read, that kind of thing. And, I can take food for thought, as well as anyone else. So I guess there's a little more leeway as far as movies and books go, but at the same time, I don't feel the desire to go out and, buy a new movie, or anything anymore. As far as books, it's the same thing. I don't, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to shake the thing there, but I mean, as far as books, I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, I've got a lot of books that, some of which I've read, others I haven't, so I don't need to go out and, buy more books, So it's just very strange getting to this point finally. And I guess it goes along with the chaos that is life, and eventually you get that moment of clarity, but, well, anyway, yeah, that's my spiel for the night. And, I hope amidst the rambling and chaos, I threw out a bit of, food for thought for y'all, and, maybe made y'all think, or, just gave y'all a different perspective. I don't know, but, or at the very least, it was just interesting to listen to, if not making a whole lot of sense. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about that and, give voice to this. So, thanks if you're listening to this. Thank you very much for taking the time to do so, and I hope you found some sense in it. Otherwise, it's just, hey, random noise. That's kind of interesting. But yeah, I just thanks again for taking the time to check things out and tune in. And y'all have a good day and a good night. Yeah, have a good night, because it is night. So take care. Bye.